And welcome to GamePoints, our weekly podcast where we get together, talk about last week's gaming news, and kind of bitch about whatever comes our way. I am your host, Stephen Brown. Down there is Sean. You can find him at @thedisco_king. Over across from him is David. He is also known as Palshife Satori at Twitter. I am, of course, CapitalistPig21. You can follow all of us on Twitter and the show at GamePoints PC. Give us a like on Facebook at GamePoints Podcast, or you can email the show if you want to be a part with any questions, comments, concerns, or anything you might want to know at GamePointsPC@gmail.com. How have you guys been today?
Swell.
Good.
Good.
I'm in the middle of an ice storm, so that's cool.
Good.
I had sunshine.
Yeah, no, I had a
great.
lot of very, very lovely February weather. We're going to go ahead and get started right off, as you can see down the bottom there, with the first topic this week. Breaking news earlier this morning. We heard that The Last Guardian's trademark expired.
Yeah, that's really rough for me. I'm not gonna lie.
Were you excited for this game, David?
Yeah, well, I'm a really big Team Ico fan because, well, Ico is amazing. Shadow of the Colossus is one of my defining PS2 games. I played the hell out of that game. I was one of the guys that played through multiple times until I could figure out how to climb all the way up to the top of the castle, and just loved that game and the universe and the story. And when they announced, Last Guardian, I bought all into it, got on the hype train, was ready to buy it on PS3. Then it turned into pseudo vaporware, and I was ready to get it on PS4 if it happened. And now I don't even know what to think. It's been, over a decade since the last game came out?
2005, I believe, is when Team Ico released Ico. Now, the news coming out today, Last Guardian, I want to say, was announced in 2009, but earlier today, what happened is, the trademark on it expired. The United States Patent and Trademark Office essentially said, hey, you didn't file an extension, so this trademark's open. Now, what this means is that Sony has 2 months to file an extension with them, and they can. So it's technically maybe not canceled, but they could have just forgot. One bit of information, apparently the person that worked for Team Ico that was in charge of patent work has left the team since this happened. So someone could have just forgot, but who really knows? I will say this too, though. That game has been in development for longer than all three Uncharted's and The Last of Us, which all came from one studio.
Yeah.
If anything that was shown back in 2009 will be completely different than what the actual game comes out as, if it even comes out at all.
Yeah, I mean, just graphically alone, it's going to be not up to snub, so they have to completely graphically overhaul it, that alone takes a lot of man hours.
Well, the problem is that the game now is building for a, genre or a group of players that already have their needs filled. Because since Shadow of the Colossus came out, the whole indie genre and small team game has hit this huge resurgence, I guess. And there's not really a big market for a AAA style indie game. Because if you think of the way Ico works, the way Shadow of the Colossus works, it kind of has an interesting twist or a different concept and a different kind of play style. But all the things that those games can deliver are the kind of things that a 20-person studio can bust out, in 6 months to a year now. So it seems strange that they have this epically scoped game that's just taking so long.
Well, it's literally a joke. There is the IGN PlayStation podcast Beyond, which I listened to. Their first story ever, they're on episode 380 something right now. Their first episode ever was on The Last Guardian.
That's hilarious.
380 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Think about that. Think about how long that is.
Yeah, it's
I just
7.5
have a problem
years.
because it's not Duke Nukem Forever. Duke Nukem Forever was that game that everyone made fun of because it didn't matter anymore because it had been in production for so long, but it was just a
Chinese
laughing
democracy.
Game. But I actually cared about Last Guardian.
That's the difference. No one really cared about Duke Nukem Forever even when it was first announced. It was like a joke back then.
I don't even get a free Dr. Pepper out of this.
It's horrible.
I get that reference.
Other big news last week, arguably the next biggest story, was, you all read the Rock, Paper, Shotgun article about Peter Molyneux, right?
Yeah. That dude got handled.
See, here's let me give you a for those who are watching, a quick synopsis of what is Godus. Godus was a game that was supposed to be like a spiritual successor to Populous, an old game Peter Molyneux worked way back when. You're a god, you can control whatever you want in the game. Before Godus was developed, he did a little project called Curiosity. And Curiosity was this iPhone app game. You tapped on this massive cube to eliminate blocks until you get to the center. And the person who got to the center was supposed to receive this grand prize. Well, the prize was he got to be the god of Godus, meaning he got to control everything that happened on the world for like 6 months. He gets a cut of the profits to the game, all kinds of stuff. Well, that was, about 2 years ago or so, and no real progress has been made on this game since. In fact, the gentleman who won, a fellow by the name of Brian Henderson, says 22 Cans, the studio behind Godus, have effectively just stopped talking to him. In addition, you have a campaign maker for the game called Konrad Nezinski, who more or less said, quote, "To be brutally candid and realistic, I simply can't see us delivering the features promised on the Kickstarter page. It's seriously looking shaky right now." This game was promised to be all kinds of... Well, it suffered from Peter Molyneux syndrome. That's the problem.
Well, I feel like this part you need to kind of deliver on some of the backstory games of Peter Molyneux and some of the stuff that he's worked on. For example, this is the guy that made Spore, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah.
And before that game was released, it was supposed to be this remarkably revolutionary, dramatic shift in gaming. Like this divine game that is born out of his brain and released upon the world, and it's ended up being this kind of quirky make a monster game.
He has a horrible talent of over-promising and under-delivering to the likes I've never seen before.
Yeah.
To the
Tremendous acting talent.
To the point to where if Peter Molyneux told me it was raining outside, I would fucking check my head out the window and double-check just to make sure.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, this is the guy who also did Fable. Remember how Fable was being hyped up as, like, the greatest, most expansive game of all time, how it would be life-changing, how you'd be able to do all this stuff. He's definitely passionate, as you can tell from this rock, paper, shotgun article that came out, which was just a brutal, brutal article. Anything that starts off with the interview asking, "Are you a pathological liar?" is already setting the tone out the gate to be horrible.
Yeah.
Well, the interviewer was pretty rough with him. Like, he'd let him get a couple lines out and then just go right back to slamming him. Like,
Rough,
why are you
but
always lying?
fair. I mean, after a while, you just have to call someone on their bullshit. And
That's
unfortunately, Peter kind of took this really to heart, and he should have. I mean, I feel for the guy, but it sounds like he might be withdrawing from the public eye, which would be the best thing for him if he actually follows through with this quote that he said here.
I think his best idea would be to actually work. Oh, sorry to cut you off.
No problem.
But if
ahead.
he actually like put a lot of effort into a project without hyping the hell out of it beforehand and telling everybody it's going to be the next greatest game of all time, but if he just worked on something and really got into it and let it take its course without having the scrutiny of the public eye the entire development cycle, and then released an amazing game and then showed up and be like, "Hey guys, I made this," that might help him a little bit.
Well, he's
Al
withdrawing
Gore
from the
video
press, and he said a quote recently. It said, quote, "My answer to this is simple. I love working on games. It's my life. I am so honored to be a part of the games industry, but I understand that people are sick of hearing my voice and hearing my promises. So I'm going to stop doing press, and I'm going to stop talking about games completely. And actually, I'm only giving you this interview now in an answer to this terrible and awful emotional time over the last 3 days. I think, honestly, the only answer for me is to completely stop talking to the press." Yes, Peter, I admire your drive, but you need to just stop talking to the press and hyping up your games. Once every 6 months, come along and show it. Go, "This is my game. I'll be back in 6 months." And then come back. Though, once again, back to the rock, paper, shotgun pathological liar comment, he did tell 3 different publications, "This is my last interview I'm giving." All within
Everyone's
an
going to
hour
have
of each
exclusive
other.
rights.
So we'll see if he sticks up to that. But man, Peter, you're listening. I know you are. I love you.
I wanted
man,
to mention the Fable
keep
thing. I think it was
down the hype.
Fable 2 when it came out. Like, that game was so overhyped, and then like when it got closer, they kind of like tried to do like smoke and mirrors thing with the dog. They're like, "Look at the dog, look at the dog, look at the dog. The dog's awesome, right? This dog's pretty baller, right? The game sucks, but look at this dog. This dog is pretty sick."
No, that was actually one of those things that makes me laugh because they tried to force the animal companion and like this feel really attached to this animal thing, and that actually brings me back to Shadow of the Colossus because that was one of the things I remember that game being praised for is like the emotional attachment a lot of people had for the horse in that game.
Yeah.
But it wasn't something put on you; it's just your trusty horse. I don't know. I remember reading articles comparing the Fable games to that part.
By the way, spoilers to anyone who was looking forward to The Last Guardian, that goddamn bird dog thing dies.
Obs.
Womp womp
Dude,
You
there's
know
no
it's
way
going
it doesn't.
to. Yeah, it
Yeah.
has to off. Let's
Lug
talk
Dragon
about
didn't
something
die.
a little bit more
That
cheerful.
horse definitely did.
Let's talk about something a little bit more cheerful. Bethesda announced the first E3 conference ever. They've never done one as far as I can tell. Now, what this means is you don't announce a conference at E3 unless you have your own separate conference, unless you have a lot of information to pump out. Does this mean we might have Fallout 4 on the horizon?
Yeah, so I was talking to my boy Ron Perlman, and yes. Yes, it
Ron
does.
Perlman confirmed it for you?
Yeah, he did. Friend of the show,
Excellent.
Ron Perlman.
Shout out to Ron Perlman.
But yeah,
Yeah.
but think
Hashtag
about
something Ron Perlman.
everyone's talking about Fallout 4. Of course, that's the big thing to come up. But think about the other properties that Bethesda owns. You have
Dishonored.
Doom 4.
I forgot they own Doom.
Yeah, they own it now.
They bought id.
Dishonored 2.
Yeah.
I would love to see a Dishonored 2 announcement. The new Wolfenstein game, New Order, was actually fantastic. It really redeemed that franchise for me. And The Evil Within, but...
Well, wait. What about the game I just saw at PAX last year? Their new Battlecry.
Oh,
crap.
the MMO. Is it first-person MMO?
No, it's
shooter.
third person.
Third-person
It's-
shooter.
Well, pseudo shooter. It's actually got a lot of melee stuff in it too.
I know almost
Think of-
nothing about it, so...
Think of I guess sort of a third-person TF2 clone, but more medieval and swordy. And the mode that they had at PAX last year was like a headquarters, where you trying to grab spots, or I guess zone defense, whatever it's called. I don't know. But yeah, there was multiple classes, so it kind of had that TF2 feel, and you run around like stabbing each other or sneaking in each other. And I remember the intro video being super awesome because it was.
It could be fun, but but the point is, E3 conference expected to be an hour long. I expect all of those to get touched on in some way, shape, or form. I expect a Fallout 4 announcement. I expect a Doom 4 announcement. I hope for a Dishonored 2 announcement. Beyond that, it's anyone's guess. Hell, Prey 2 might make a comeback.
Yeah, it's been 7 years since the last Fallout game, outside of not New Vegas, of course, but Fallout 3, like a game they actually did. It's been 7 years since Fallout, which I believe is their game that's been taking the longest out of all their IPs.
Well, they
I
alternate.
think it's got the longest.
Bethesda
between that and
themselves
Skyrim.
will alternate between that and Skyrim, and they won't work on one until the other is finished, from what I understand.
Yeah, and so it's about that time because Skyrim came out in 2011, so that game's pretty much run its course.
11 at that.
Yeah, and so I mean, that was 3. That was 3 years between games. This was before, so it's around the same timeline. The Fallout franchise is slowly becoming one of my favorite franchises in gaming history, especially since they took over with 3, and New Vegas was a great on too. So I really like the Fallout universe more than the Morrowind, the Elder Scrolls universe.
Agreed.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that do. It's just the whole 1960s patriotism kind of thing. It just really gets me.
I
off.
love how jingoistic it is. Yeah, I definitely.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Get off
alt
on that.
history, surviving the nukes, screw the commies, whole vibe that's hilarious and makes for a really fun universe.
When Liberty Prime throws bombs, talking about commies and stuff like that, that shit just I was playing that game rock hard.
No, it was fantastic game. Though instead of looking in the past, look a little bit to the future. Titanfall 2. We all remember Titanfall. We played it for a hot minute. It was
Dude,
really fun.
I loved that game.
No,
for
Titanfall
those
was
2 weeks.
fantastic.
For
2 weeks.
Those 2 weeks were the best 2 weeks of me playing Titanfall.
Yeah, Titanfall was awesome for, like you said, approximately 2 weeks, and it was just a flash in the pants, like so many big games this year have been. But it's hinted that the next one's going to be multi-platform. They've been teasing it off and on, but they refuse to confirm it. Well, CEO of EA, Brian Jurgensen, recently came out at the Technology, Internet, and Media Conference recently and kind of suggested that, well, it could be coming back. To quote him, "Last year it was on the Xbox only. In the future, we haven't yet announced, but we'll probably have another Titanfall game. It'll probably be a bigger footprint than just a single platform. I think that's a huge positive for us." Blake Jurgensen. I think I got his first name wrong, but
I love how vague that quote is. In the future, we haven't talked about it, but we're